Now that's a serious fact.
This is the Serious Sam Internal Test 0.10 build, leaked online on March 21st, 2025. It was compiled for On Deck Interactive, which is a subdivision of God Games, and was distributed to a few gaming journalist sites for review. It runs fine on modern PCs, but the camera control has issues, and not in the same manner as the other earlier Serious Sam builds. This one has a strange, maybe 0.25 second camera delay that makes it just short of unplayable. I mean, good luck doing a successful run of Dunes. I was able to play through it fine on my old Windows XP, which eliminates the delay, but the sensitivity was still kinda jerky. If the gameplay looks a tad foolish sometimes, that would be why. Oh, I better throw up a reminder here to create the folder's save game with player 0 inside, else you won't be able to save your game. You can do this while the game is running if you need to. That's what I did. One last thing before we get into this, I'm only going to mention what's unique to this build. I've talked about the other prototype builds where the other content is discussed, and for that I would suggest skipping to the Karnak chapter of my Serious Sam TFE feature video. So when you start a new game, you're brought into the Tomb of Ramses, which is the third level in the final game, but the second level at this time in development. Well, to go in order of what I noticed here, first there was this secret lantern hop, which is in the final game, but it's very difficult to pull off in this build. I'm just surprised it exists at all. A lot of secrets don't yet, making this a secret that goes way back. The arachnoid family all use different textures here. It is something I theorized for years with a couple of old screenshots. The rocket launcher secret where you jump into some hovering sparkles, well, the sparkles aren't here. So I'm not sure how they intended for you to get it, but if you time your jump just right, you can barely collect it. At this time, the beta rocket launcher uses the final firing sound. Nothing too remarkable, but I should point out that the firing sound of your double-barreled shotgun is a little different. This version of Tomb of Ramses is pretty similar to its final iteration, with one major outlier here. The final arena is a lot shorter. No tedious horde of clear and marsh hoppers. Instead, you get 3 major arachnoids. I'm inclined to prefer this as a longtime player of Serious Sam, but I can't forget that this arena teaches players how to effectively eliminate clear with the freshly introduced double-barreled shotgun. I can't seem to activate the third-person mode in this build, but if the player dies, you can see that the Serious Sam Alpha model is still being used. I suppose it was around this time when beloved voice actor John J. Dick became the voice of Serious Sam, as the final game's wound sounds are present. Well, present but higher pitched, which is more likely the original pitch before Crow Team shifted him down. And now level 2, level 3 in this build. Yellow Terrain, or Sand Canyon as we know it. This level comes with the wackiest discovery in this build, and you'll see why in just a moment. Yellow Terrain has a strikingly yellow contrast to it, which was toned down in the final game. That would explain the placeholder title. This is where the level starts. Yep, right here. Repeat players will know that this is actually where the level ends in the final game. It gets even weirder, by the way, but hold on. Is that new music I hear? Or old unreleased music? That sounds a lot like the Sacred Yards level theme. So, the level's over now, right? Nope, we're going underground, and this should look familiar to you. Here we have an early marsh hopper texture. These guys were, at this time, exclusively referred to as gizmos, which is the same file name they use in the final game. They don't have a Natrixa entry here, which is consistent with a couple other enemies at the time. Oh, and no, the Tommy gun secret doesn't exist yet. Let's get out of here. Would you look at that? The starting point of Sand Canyon with its famous Kamikaze Hill. What a bizarre change-up, but to be honest, I actually feel like it makes more sense here. Considering the intensity that follows, it's more climactic. Kinda makes me wonder why they decided to change it. Oh, and that secret beyond the hills? Forget about it. That whole area isn't there yet. There aren't even mountains in the distance, nothing. It's like the world ends here. Now, where we would go underground in the final game, as we did a moment ago, here the level ends. Somehow we end up in the Dream Waterfall, or Moon Mountains as we know it. The music's a bit different, take a listen. And there's also this unused fight theme, which didn't play in the build, but you can find it in the files. This marks the first time I've encountered an alpha minor biomech in an unmodified Serious Sam build. I like whatever those horns are protruding from the back. Reptiloids have an earlier set of animations here. Interestingly, this original death animation perfectly syncs with that thud sound. But the final version does not. Oh, look at that Tommy gun. It seems to be relying on the first-person textures for Alpha Sam, but they're not implemented anymore, so his arm becomes whatever this is. They didn't even fix this. In the final game, they just removed the arm altogether. Layout and spawns in Dream Waterfalls are nearly identical to the final game. One notable difference in this build is the lava golem boss where the Reptiloid Highlander is expected to be. Considering the Highlander does exist in this build, that might have been intentional. If you'd rather not fight this guy, shoot some rockets in its direction before it spawns in, then it'll just fall off and doesn't actually die. But you can proceed to the next level anyways. We've reached the Oasis, and oh man, no waterfall secret. What do you know? Another iteration of a familiar theme. There are a fair number of spawn differences here, which often made it feel like I was playing a version of the map remade from someone's memory. It's close, but not quite there yet. Further emphasized by a music track that I could trick a Sam fan into thinking is a Mandela effect. I like this major biomech here, which usually spawns in front of the building, but for some reason, there he is, and he's slipping all over the place. Makes for an interesting mechanic, actually. Not as easy to predict where its projectiles will end up. These reptiloids inside the building were a surprise. In the final build, this room is flooded by clears instead. I don't see why we couldn't have had both, just maybe not at once. I guess the minigun secret isn't here. Can't destroy the statue, so no jump pad to use. 268 gizmos. Can you beat that? Well, I'll sure try. This room has different textures for the walls and floors compared with the final. Changes the whole look of this place. Here we have it, the fan favorite dunes, which isn't all that different here to be honest. But I did notice a bunch of on-screen messages like "one more to go" when I kill a certain enemy. It signifies that one more needs to be killed in order for, well, anything they've programmed really, usually another set of enemy spawns. Yippee! This is more of a debugging message, which wasn't meant to show in the final game. Alas, it does at least once. Ooh, the prototype Highlander. Taking a closer look, you can see patches of brown on its legs and on top of its feet. Also has a clearly defined set of finger and toenails. All these patterns are still in the final game, but the color there matches the rest of its body. The common Reptiloid is also a bit different, but not as noticeably so as the Highlander. You can actually jib the common Reptiloids in this build, should you draw continuous minigun fire at it from start to finish. Man, the final fight in this build made me realize how relentless the Reptiloids are here. Endless green balls of death, and they move so fast! Overall, there's not much unique about dunes here, a bit unfortunate to be honest. I love replaying this level, and it would have been cool to see a recognizably different iteration of it. Some time ago, Nigmus created a modified version of Karnak for this build that contains all the available weapons and enemies, present but idle. It includes some leftovers from the alpha, which weren't dropped in here, they're actually in the files. Ooh, real intimidating, Sam. Here's the alpha cannon. Finally, we can see it in an unmodified build. The animation and firing sound is different. By the way, did you know? The cannon's charging feature wasn't present in the Alpha build of Serious Sam, functioning similar to the Alpha's grenade launcher with a single predetermined launching speed. Wait, was that a nuke ball? As it turns out, the nuke ball was once the only functionality of the cannon. It was later on, I suppose around the Public Test 2 era, when it became a separate mode. Then it was scrapped altogether before release, in preference for the single explosion cannon that we know and love today. Quite a bit of changes for this thing over time. Oh wow, you can even jib Highlanders in this build. Since the enemies in this build are completely untouched, and it includes some alpha leftovers, I can finally talk about a few things that I've never really been able to before. But let's start with the 0.10 content. The Electrofish has a gray texture here, and swims directly towards the player with a less than convincing animation. The final game's animation is a lot better. Speaking of, I moved only the texture over to the final game to see what it would look like. Pretty cool, but I'll admit that the blue final texture is better. I could see this texture being used for some kind of custom variant of the creature, like maybe these could be zombie Electrofish? We still don't know much about the Elder Arachnoid or Monster Scorpman as it's referred to in the files here. Where would it be introduced? How common would it be? Who knows? This is cool to see, the R2-D2 driving robot. We've only seen it before in editor thumbnails, far as I recall. It's the most finished of the droid enemy lineup, of which many are probably lost to time. This driving robot shoots 2 minor biomech lasers at the player before moving around again. It happens to bleed when you shoot it. Actually, all the robots do. The Flying Fighter Robot. This guy just hovers around and keeps firing at you. It's super annoying. Likely unfinished behavior. Imagine being a disobedient child and your mom points to you and says unfinished behavior. The Spider Driving Robot. It can move around and throws bombs like the beheaded bomber. Cool for thematic purposes, but ultimately, when you've got the bomber already, this is a bit redundant. The Kamikaze Flying Robot. Well, not much to say about this one. Now, the Catman isn't new here, but I would sure like to see that earlier version of him as seen in a Serious Editor thumbnail. The Catman was reportedly the first enemy designed for In the Flesh, the original Serious Sam prototype, and my guess is that was its ITF form. Speaking of, check out this In the Flesh cat. And look at this dude. Look at him. Well, that concludes my findings in this leak. The many strange pre-release builds of Serious Sam make me really appreciate how the game turned out in the end. You wouldn't know just by playing Serious Sam the First Encounter that it had such a wild development history. Now, considering, let's look back again on my Serious Sam Classic feature. That video had a huge emphasis on different builds of the game, and we've made a few discoveries since that I wish I could have included in that video. Better late than never, right? So this is just crazy to me. As of late 2000, Crow Team was still deciding whether or not to include the Tommy gun in single player. It was mainly being considered for deathmatch at the time. The reason this is so wild to me is that that particular weapon slot has carried across every Serious Sam game since. I really can't imagine this series without it. During the public test era of Serious Sam's development, there were constant changes being made to its assets. Found throughout the Help section in Serious Editor, you can find an intermediary rocket launcher that we've never seen elsewhere. The Alpha launcher was gray and the final launcher was brown. This here is a sort of mix between the two, of course before the final design was created. It's not a bad look, and I especially like that rocket texture. Do you happen to recall when I mentioned a certain flamethrower model in a very compressed TSE image? Well, check this out. Here's what appears to be the same model used in an early development build of First Encounter. The flamethrower was planned for First Encounter and is fully present in the alpha, but we didn't know it went this far into TFE's development. Curiously, this screenshot takes place in Metropolis, during a section that players have dubbed as the infamous Clear Alley. Think about it. Maybe the reason it's so tough is because the flamethrower would have spawned there instead of the minigun. Yes, the minigun is great and hard to complain about, though the flamethrower handles crowd control like nothing else. Beyond the flamethrower, we also have a look at the scrapped Ghostbuster weapon from around the time of Public Test 2. Likely the most developed iteration of it before being scrapped. From what I've heard, it was pretty much finished and ready for the final game, only that never ended up happening. And the exact same thing would happen yet again for Serious Sam 2. Except now it is kind of in the game, or I don't know, this thing is weird. It has a weird history, it's cursed. Over the years, some people have found older media with extreme likeness to Serious Sam enemies, most notably Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, implying that Crow Team might have been directly inspired by it. Here's a little-known fact that I heard about recently. In 2002, PC Zone magazine released issue 0622, which included a CD with various expansions for games like Counter-Strike, Deus Ex, and of course Serious Sam. A mod called Frame Warp was included, created by someone named Forager. What's interesting about it is that it uses two Serious Sam Alpha enemies, the Fishman and the Flying Fighter Robot, with a custom texture. How did he get them? I don't know, but he's listed as a serious thanks in the first encounter credits, so he must have been close with Crow Team. Unfortunately, no, you don't fight them in the mod, they only appear in cutscenes. And for our last bonus, First Encounter's Tower of Babel, or so we presume. What's special about this? Well, the Tower of Babel ended up being scrapped and repurposed for the second encounter. This appears to be an overview of the original First Encounter version, teased during the development of Serious Sam Classic's Revolution. The Alligator Pit team were actually planning to include a whole bunch of old unused Serious Sam content here, but unfortunately none of that came to be. I guess if you still want to play some iteration of Tower of Babel in First Encounter, you kind of have the Legend of the Beast DLC? That has its own weird story behind it, but you've heard me parrot that enough times already. I gotta say, I love the fact that we have new classic Serious Sam music in 2025, or at least older iterations of the music that would become final. They're both distinctly different and yet similar at the same time. I imagine it like Serious Sam as released in our neighboring dimension. You might be thinking, surely we've got all the early Serious Sam content we need by now, right? Well, we don't need anything really, it's just cool to see and think about, especially during a year where the franchise is essentially dead. I wrote this before the Serious Sam 2 update, by the way. There's still a lot of early Serious Sam content that we've never gotten our hands on. Personally, I would love to see that build with the Beheaded Crew sporting military outfits. It must have been pre-Public Test 1 because at that time, Serious Sam still used that alpha double-barreled shotgun. By the first Public Test, it was completely replaced. I'd also like to see those pre-final gray biomechs and that mysterious Tommy gun model. Also those old flamethrower and rocket launcher models we talked about. Honestly though, I have my doubts that we'll ever see them. These builds probably never left Crow Team and they don't really leak stuff, at least not anymore. That one shrine map occasionally becomes a focus of discussion, and if I recall correctly, some have asked Crow Team about it, but they can't remember what it was. Most likely a test room or something they worked on for a very short time before being abandoned. For that reason, I don't really make a big deal out of this one, but hey, if someone wants to make a cool custom map about it, that'd be awesome. Well, that'll do it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully I can talk to you about more scrapped Serious Sam content in the future, but it all depends on what we get access to. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to watch my content, and I hope to see you again very soon. Take care.
Yeah!